I guess the short answer to that question is they can, and they do. Suicide in New Zealand is not illegal, although I think most people would regard it as an absolute tragedy. And it's an unfortunate fact in our society that more and more older people are in fact ending their lives prematurely by suicide. So yeah, the short answer to that question is people do and can suicide, but of course a caring society, I think, seeks to prevent suicide. I know that the question is more leaning towards the question of state-sanctioned suicide or euthanasia, state-assisted suicide. And the right that is at stake there, if it is a right, and I would argue that philosophically it's a nonsense to speak of euthanasia as a right to die. It's inevitable that we're all going to die, so I don't think you can really speak of something that is inevitable as a right. But more particularly, even if we put that argument aside, I think the right, or the so-called right that is at stake, is whether or not I can ask or demand of someone, the state, a doctor, whoever, to actually help me end my life. So the issue is not just about whether I want to end my life, but whether someone else should be implicated in that, or whether the state should sanction the ending of somebody's life, whether my own or anybody else's. And a long tradition within society, including the churches, that we saw and still see suicide as a tragedy, and that we seek instead, I think, to care for people in a way that meets their fears or meets their needs at the end of life. So is pain a good reason to end your life? I don't think there's any good reason that anyone could or should end their life, but there is a myth around pain. And interestingly, if you look at those places overseas, and I'm thinking in particular of Oregon at the moment, where assisted suicide is legal, where people can ask for that. The Oregon Ministry of Health collect data on the reasons why people want to end their lives prematurely. And they are, for the most part, people with cancer, although interestingly the numbers of those who are asking for assisted suicide for cancer is dropping all the time. So people are choosing it for a wider range of reasons. But even those people who have a life-limiting illness, the main reasons they give for wanting to end their lives are not related to pain or fear of pain. It's about 5th or 6th in the list of reasons people give. And the key reasons are actually social or existential. They relate to people's fear of losing a certain quality of life. They relate to things like their loss of enjoyment. They can't do some of the things that they previously were able to do. And I think most critically it relates to the fear that people will become a burden. That features in 50% of the reasons or the people. It features in more than 50% of the people who request assisted dying in Oregon. So it's actually not about pain. And if we look at the palliative care service in New Zealand, where it is available, and I've talked with many palliative care physicians about this, nobody needs to die in physical pain these days, provided they can in fact access good quality palliative care. And people will say, well, there are those hard cases, there are those extreme cases. And that is true, but in those extreme cases, there is always the option of palliative sedation. So that's the use of medication at a level that is required to make sure that the person, their distress, whether it's pain, physical pain, or whether it's more of an existential stress, that can in fact be dealt with through sedation in those very few cases where it can't be managed in other ways. The irony, I think, in some respects, is that a euthanasia law is about people, that small group of people who want to die, telling others that you have to help me die. So I think there's a certain irony of that. The current law as it stands doesn't in fact tell people what they can do. It does say that we won't assist you in ending your life. More importantly, I think it is about being committed to giving people the sorts of care, meeting their needs, assuaging their fears. And palliative care is very, very good at doing that where people can access it. I think it is a reality that there are still people who are experiencing bad deaths in New Zealand, and that's a travesty, and we need to look at that. The reasons, as I understand it, relate more to the difficulty people have in accessing the high quality palliative care that is available in some parts of New Zealand and not in others.